giant robots smashing into other giant robots.
One thing I've learned today is my eyes are really bad. I can't tell. I'm looking at the screen. I can't tell whether I'm blurry or not. I'm hooking up my camera and I can't see the writing on the side of the camera that tells me which way the plug goes in. I switched to my computer glasses so that I could, and I still couldn't read it.
That's not great. How long has this been going on for? I don't want to turn into your optician, but how long has this been going on for, Chad?
I don't know. I think it's been getting worse.
Right. Just some general checks. Are you dizzy when you stand up?
No.
Okay. You haven't been short of breath recently, have you?
No. I think I'm okay. I think it is just my eyes.
Okay. Well, at least we've isolated the issue.
Maybe I'm just tired.
Yeah. It could be that you're exhausted. Do you have? You said like computer glasses? Is that a thing?
Yeah. So I got glasses for the first time probably about 8-9 years ago now, and that was just for seeing far distances. And then a few years ago, I was having trouble seeing close while I was using my computer and that kind of thing. It was a little fuzzy. But since I have, I need glasses for seeing far, I need to be able to see close as well. I switch glasses when I'm primarily looking at something
we
close.
would call them like reading glasses.
Yeah, but I don't use them to read.
Okay.
It's just like, when I'm going to be looking at that length of time. I guess I could use them to read. I guess I just don't read.
Right. Okay. That's fair enough. Do you not read anything?
I listen to audiobooks while I run and exercise and that kind of thing. And so I'm listening to the third book of the Stormlight archive, Oathbringer. I think it's 50 hours long audiobook.
50 hours?
Yeah.
That's a big commitment.
It's good. The biggest downside is I like listening to podcasts goes off. Like while I'm listening to that book, I'm just like locked in on that book, not listening to nothing else. And so my podcast queue builds up. It's like way too long now.
Right.
Now I need to decide what podcast am I going to kill?
Right. Because you get heavily invested.
Yeah.
You get drawn in. I got drawn into something last week. This was Can we do let's hit off with the intro before marketing and production lose their rag. Hello everyone, and we're back, and it's the giant robots smashing into other giant robots podcast. Is it different? This is my vibe. Another one of our special episodes where me and Chad do something a little bit different. Normally Will is here, but Will sadly cannot be joining us today. We miss you, Will. And we normally explore the design, development, and business of great products, but these ones tend to go a little bit off script, so we'll see where we end up. I'm your host, Sami Birnbaum.
And I'm your other host, Chad Pytel.
So I was telling you, you were saying that you get drawn into audiobooks. I was drawn into playing Call of Duty Zombies again, which I haven't done for years, and it took me way back because my brother called me and he's like, "Oh, I've just got a PlayStation 4." So that's, I don't know how many years old that is, but it's not the most recent console. And he's like, "Just come to me and we'll just play for half an hour." So I'm like, "Yeah, but it's 10 o'clock already, like 10 o'clock at night." He's like, "Yeah, no sweat.
You can't just play for half an hour. That's ridiculous."
It was ridiculous.
You fell for it.
So I got there at 10 o'clock. Next thing I know, we're up to wave 47 and it's 1 a.m. And I'm like messaging my wife saying like, "Yeah, I'm leaving now. I'm just coming." And we kept going for hours, just kind of roll back the years, and got really intense. But it was really fun.
I am terrible at first-person shooters. I think it's because I just don't play them enough, but and other people do. And so if you're worse than the people you're playing with, there's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah.
I played Call of Duty. I was like, oh, let's. My son was playing it a few years ago, and I was like, oh yeah, I'll put it on my computer. We can play. No, he destroyed me.
Yeah, it's very hard if you get pulled in with someone, and you'll find this. I actually remember when it moved from gaming was only local to online gaming started becoming really usable and being able to do it, and just going into these online matches and just getting absolutely destroyed because you end up with people who have put in far more hours than you have. And it can be soul destroying. Like if you play with someone who kind of knows the maps, knows which way to turn, has incredible hand-eye coordination. You get annihilated. But having said that, if you put in enough hours online with really good players, it starts creeping up to, okay, I can get 1 kill a game. Like that's my thing. I can do 1 kill, and then I can get 2, and then I can get 3, and you really build up, and you can get really efficient and really good. I'm not saying that's a good investment of time, but if you did want to pursue that, you could really upskill.
I have a story of my soul being crushed by online gaming. I was playing, I think it was Diablo or Diablo 2, and that you could connect to a service called Kagi and go online and play with people.
Mm-hmm.
And I forget whether you only played online or in my memory it was you could play locally and you build up all your character and all your stuff and everything, and then you could take that same character online. And so I had invested hours and hours and hours building this character, gaining treasure, that kind of thing. And then I went online and played with a group, and I died out in the, in a dungeon somewhere. And they just left me.
That's horrendous.
They took all my, because when you die, all your stuff falls out. They took all my stuff. I never played that game again. I was so crushed.
Wow. So I want to start off by saying this is a psychologically safe place. This is definitely a medium where we can talk about this. And but let me answer. Does your character then respawn? Like, do you lose everything you've invested?
You respawn back in town, but I had lost all my stuff.
And how long had it taken to accumulate that stuff, which was horribly stolen?
I don't know. A long time.
That's not okay.
Yeah.
Did you know these people in the real world?
No, they were just some randos online.
Oh, okay, so I hope that you kind of found them after and just kind of spam them with abusive messages.
I just signed off.
Yeah,
I was just too crushed.
Like, I'm sure there's a lot of people.
I loved that game. My high school yearbook quote, like they would have your picture and a quote next to it, was from the Diablo manual.
Oh wow! So this almost was part of your identity.
It was, and then I got killed, and all my stuff got stolen, and I never played again.
That's horrendous. That's not okay. That's not okay. It's an interesting game design. The fact that you can spend so long, getting things, but they can be taken.
Oh man.
Wow.
That's not what we're here to talk about today, but I think it is a learning experience. And today we're going to talk about things we've learned recently.
Yeah, I'm really excited to talk about this because we're recording this on a Friday, which means it's kind of bang in the middle of my investment time. So at Thoughtbot, we are incredibly lucky to have, it normally tends to be on average 1 day a week, which is a Friday normally, that we have investment time where we can spend time kind of learning, understanding new things, as well as doing things to kind of benefit the wider company as a whole.
And the community, yep.
And the community, yeah. And I've just had my head up until Chad slacked me and said, "Hey, where are you? We're recording." About 2 minutes ago. I've just had my head in MCP servers and Claude Code, and I'm a bit blown away, but at the same time, it's really quite simple in its conceptually simple. So essentially, you have the LLM, which is a word predictor, that you give it access to certain function calls that it can make, and you just have a helpful MCP server which acts as a proxy between those third-party services and the LLM. It's just really the reason, and as I think I did a live stream on this trying to explain, the JSON protocol, the actual protocol, the model context protocol, and what it is. But it's just, because you've got now these third parties all invested in developing tools that the LLM can access. That's made these LLMs slightly more interesting. So I had it.
What MCP server were you using? What were you doing?
Yeah, so I used one called Playwright today, which allowed...
That was one of the things that I was going to mention I learned recently. A few weeks ago, I did a live stream using Playwright.
Way.
Yeah.
Shut the MCP front door. Server. You could not make this up. Yeah.
Because we had done the live stream where we were doing browser automation with one of our clients, Front Row.
Okay.
And it wasn't very... we got something that worked, but it was all running in ChatGPT agent, which you can't script. It's just only available on the web as from the client, the ChatGPT interface.
Oh, so you say to ChatGPT, please, could you go to this website and do these things?
And do these things, right. Yeah. And so we also then said, well, there's these other tools for running against your browser locally, and the one I had used was called Browser Use, and we were doing that, and it just isn't very good. And then I discovered Playwright MCP because I was like, you know what? I bet someone has written an MCP server for Playwright. Makes total sense. And it turns out someone has, and it was Microsoft. So it's really, really good. It works really well.
And why is that different? No, but why is that different to using something like, Selenium and a Capybara script?
Because it can respond dynamically to what it sees.
Right. So if something changes,
that's why it's different. Right. So what we were using it for was doing QA on production websites where people embed the Front Row widget on their website, like on their Shopify store, on every product page and that kind of stuff. So they really want to be able to visit those websites and say, does it look like there's any problems with the embedded widget on this site? And they want to go to like basically every product page and all that stuff. So basically identifying visual rendering differences as well.
Okay. So were you then going to build... So this MCP exists, and let's say I'm, for example, using it with Claude Code. What were you using? What LLM were you using on the back end to connect with this MCP server?
I think I was using Claude as well, but I was doing it from Visual Studio Code.
Okay, but were you going to put? What I'm trying to work out is, were you going to host that onto a website? Were you going to have like a back end where you had an LLM go?
It's not really necessary. You can do that, but it's not really necessary for this task because someone would just run it on their computer and be like, I want to check all the websites now, and it will go off and do it in the background.
Got it.
Because it's using headless Chrome, so it's not even launching a browser. What were you using it for?
Well,
just playing around.
I just wanted to play around. So I found this website called MCP Pulse, which is kind of like similar to Hugging Face, but Hugging Face will, let's say, give you the latest LLM open source models. This one gives you like the latest MCP servers that people have been building, kind of what's trending, what's popular, and just digging around there and seeing what I could use with Claude Code. Another one I found, which is really helpful, which I'm sure loads of people are already aware of, but I just wasn't, is one called Context 7. And what that does, it allows the LLM to check the most recent documentation for libraries. So let's say I'm coding and I say in Rails, one of the issues you have, it will, because it's a word predictor, it will make up an API method which doesn't exist. So it makes sense that a post class should have, or let's take the array class in Ruby. It makes sense the array class should have a method saying, I don't know, sort by number, or whatever it is, which might exist, I don't know, but let's pretend it doesn't exist. So what it does is you can tell it to use context 7, or it will understand that it's worth using, and that will kind of just go and connect to context 7 and check the documentation, and therefore it just becomes a bit more accurate, and you can rely on it a little bit more.
That's cool. One of the things, so not to make this a plug, but we have another show called AI in Focus. It's a live streaming show where I have guests and by myself do coding tasks, different things, trying out different tools and using AI tools and techniques, or building AI features in our apps live. And so on an upcoming episode, we're going to be doing some stuff with an MCP server. And when I was first exposed to MCP servers, this is something that I learned. I realized there's really 2 layers where MCP servers, as like an application developer, you might use them or implement them. And one is like at that while you're coding. So, and there's actually people. There's 2, I think 2 gems out there that you put them and you run them in development and test mode in your Rails app, and they launch an MCP server for your Rails app, but it's not for production. It's for locally. So it has functions for like, give me all the models. What are all the method names? What are all the, like, those kinds of things to expose to your code assistant in a structured way all the information about your Rails app code base.
That's interesting.
So it sort of does what Context 7 does, but not for documentation, but for your actual application. So you run that in development mode. And then there's the other thing of, well, I have an actual application and I want to expose an MCP server to users to use.
Yes. Yeah.
And then there's also gems that let you do that in a Rails app as well. So they provide, you drop it in, it's an engine, it provides the controllers and everything, and you just wire up the functionality that you want to do.
Oh, that's very cool.
So we're going to be doing that on a future, like in the next few weeks, I think.
That's really cool. Is it too late to sign up?
Do you want to come on the show and do it?
Is that an invitation?
Yes.
Well, let's do it. Yeah, put me on that one, because I've been playing around with the MCP stuff. The other stuff I also found. I don't know if I'm allowed to do this. Well, they'll cut it out if I get in trouble right now. You can connect it to, let's say, your Google Calendar and Gmail, and then you can start to ask it questions, and you can say, "What do I have to do on my schedule today?" Or, "Hey, what's in my inbox?"
Yeah.
My concern there is around data. And so I don't know where we have to be kind of like a little bit cautious. And I just did it kind of to play around.
That's actually how I first started using browser use, or whatever one that isn't using MCP that wasn't working very well. It basically does it takes screenshots of your live browser, and that's how it was working. That's what I was trying to do originally, because we had done an email to a bunch of people, past clients, I think, and a bunch of the emails bounced. And so I had all these emails in my inbox of the bounce things, and it was like 50 of them or something like that. Okay. And I didn't want to have to manually go in and say, remove this person from the list, or add them to a list of bounce so we can find their new email address. Yeah. And so I was like, oh, if I can have a browser using thing that can go through and pull out the bounced email addresses, that would be great.
Yeah.
It almost worked. It almost worked. It almost went through the emails, got the bounced ones. That worked fine. It then tried to open up a tab. What the instruction I was giving it to was start a Google Sheet and add the bounced email addresses to the sheet. And it opened a tab, it opened a Google Sheet, but it just visually, it just couldn't click in the right places and do the right things on a Google Sheet.
Right.
So I ended up just saying create a Google Doc instead, and it did that, and it added a list to the Google Doc.
Okay, that's good. So this one is essentially going to be a little bit more reliable because it's got the inherent function calls available to it to say archive these emails or do whatever you want.
I think so. Yeah.
I guess there's a concern there around data, but you can tell me offline.
No, well, you're connecting to it locally. Oh no, you're connecting through it through ChatGPT or Claude Code.
This one is Claude. Yeah. We need to read through the data issues and see. But it's in theory what it can do.
Yeah. I mean, in theory, it's no different than connecting, using a service where you have connected your Gmail.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, it's to say I've got loads of I think Canva I've got connected.
Calendly connects to your calendar.
Yeah. So, but it's really, I don't know. It's really interesting. Is that going to be kind of the new UI? Is that going to be the interface for how we connect with things, where we say, what emails do I have today? And can you just respond saying this? And can you respond doing that? Or I don't know.
I don't know about that, because I don't really like interacting with my voice. So maybe, but then typing things. If I'm typing things, I don't know. Maybe like the kids will grow up talking to computers, and they'll be more comfortable working that way. But
yeah, it's interesting because will it save time, or do you are you shifting the way you use it? Because like you're saying, you actually need to speak and explain yourself and be present to see what it does and potentially check exactly what's happened. But it's interesting. I can connect it to. I could connect it to. I actually played around trying to connect it to Slack, but I didn't manage to get it set up. Where I'll be able to say to it, "Hey, send a message in Slack." I got it opening applications on my machine. So open Spotify for me, and it can just open it for me.
That's a different MCP server, or
that's a different one. Yeah. That's a different one. Yeah.
Well, and that's the thing, is that we can do that now with Siri, and what they. There was the whole thing with Apple. They announced Apple Intelligence and a bunch of new features about computer use, and then they didn't ship any of it, and they delayed it. But assuming it does come out eventually, it will be built into macOS to do that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think under the hood it's just using basic scripts. I think OSA script. Does that make any sense?
Oh, that's what the MCP server is doing? Using? Yeah. macOS has OSA scripts. Yeah.
Okay. So exactly. Yeah. So that's what it's doing. And I think that's important to realize. All these things are not new. We could have done all these things, writing the scripts ourselves, hitting these APIs in Gmail ourselves. The only thing we're doing is using an LLM to ask it to predict whether it should do this call and how it should make that call. And then it hands it over. If you're using Claude Code, it hands it over to the Claude client, which then goes and does that for it. The LLM doesn't do anything. The LLM doesn't make any calls. All the LLM understands is kind of like text input and text output. But yeah, so that's kind of where my head's been very recently in terms of MCP servers. But what's been going on in your world?
Well, I have a small thing also about AI, and I learned it yesterday on the stream. Mateus and I were coding with Copilot in Visual Studio Code, and we were in ask mode, and Mateo said, "Oh, well, it's only using this file as context, so we want to switch over to agent mode so it'll look at the whole code base." And I was like, "Yep, you're right," and we did that. And then someone was like, "No, you can do # or hash code base to automatically add the whole code base to context." So that's a hot tip that I didn't know. You can totally do that.
Yeah, that's I did find that out. as well when I kind of, because it gets frustrating if you want to ask kind of more global questions.
Mm-hmm.
And so I did use that from time to time. But it reminds me that I had this massive task on Thursday, which was yesterday, on a client project where they want to rename a table,
Mm-hmm.
a database table,
Mm-hmm.
database table that is what you would consider the core data of their project. So the project is essentially about it connects influencers accounts. So brands can kind of understand. So you've got TikTok accounts, Instagram accounts. An influencer would connect their account to this platform, pulls in their data, and displays it for brands to be able to see what demographics they're hitting, which is quite an interesting project. Except we wanted to rename the table called influencers, which is like a big table. That's like a core part of their system, like brands and influencers. And it is everywhere.
What is it being renamed to?
Oh, please don't ask me this. I don't know if I agree with the renaming.
Oh, okay.
It's being renamed to Profile. We've gone back and forth on what it should be called and how it should be represented.
I am a big believer, even if it's difficult, to make sure that you always name things the things you actually call them.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, no. So,
even if it's difficult. Yeah.
So that's the problem. The problem is, as actually, it's born out from them onboarding with thoughtbot with myself and designers. And there's been a lot of confusion, and the conversations we've been having verbally have differed from what things are called in the code. And so we've managed to get them. We've launched their TikTok integration, and we decided let's have a cool down period. So we spent 8 weeks running fast, developing this feature that they wanted. And in the cool down period, we want to address some of these things that have come up. And one of the big things is like the way we're describing things and speaking about things is not matching with how it's entrenched in the code. And that's causing confusion. And it even impacts like how you design things. It actually does have an impact more than we realized. So the decision has been made to rename it. And in my mind, like this is a great task for an LLM, right?
It depends. Because when I've tried this before, as long as the thing was very isolated and that word didn't appear in places that it doesn't need to change, it worked fine. But I tried it one time where it was not an isolated change and like the word needed to change, but only some of the time.
Okay.
That was a really difficult task. And so maybe I could have gotten it to work with refining the prompt or something, but at the end of the day, it was easier to, do a global search and then myself go through and be like, yeah, that one needs to change. That one doesn't need to change.
Yeah. So that's what I would have done in the past. But in my head, like I'm thinking, no, we should be able to utilize these tools to be able to do this for us. So I opened up Claude Code and I put it in ultra thinking mode. It's very interesting actually. First I put it into plan mode, so you can toggle what mode it's in. So I put it into plan mode, which means it will plan its approach first. And then you have certain keywords to put it into more of a thinking mode. So you can use think, which puts it into kind of low thinking. And then if you say think hard, it will go into medium thinking. And then for those who are feeling really on the edge, you put it into ultra thinking, right? And it's really cool because actually like they go in rainbow colors and it's like, I am in maximum thinking mode. So I did that and I told it to kind of plan everything out. And I tried to be really accurate in my prompt and explain the layers this will impact. So you've got the database layer, the application layer, broke that down into like, look at policies, all the things, views, parcels, all the things I could think of. It's a very big task because there's also loads of join tables. So let's say you've got the influencer as a table. Off that, there's influencer categories, influencer organizations. And to really be consistent, we want to rename those as well. Now, I know I should probably do it in separate PRs and do it separately, but I wanted to go in agent mode and see, does this just do things for me? So it started doing its thing. It then shouted at me saying, "You've used way too many tokens. You cannot carry on until 7 p.m." So I was like, okay. I caught it a few times making a few mistakes, and I did tweak it here or there. But so far, it's made changes to over 150 files. And I'm kind of like, I'm still in the middle of it and I need it to carry on. But my concern is, am I going to end up? It's too much. Yeah. Like, what am I going to do on Monday? What am I going to do eventually? It's going to tell me it's done, right? And maybe I've got an idea to say, a few more prompts to say, okay, now just check everything, check these things, look at these things again. So I can do it a few times. But ultimately, I'm going to have to read through a massive PR. Like, I can't really get around that. So I don't know how much time I've saved or how painful it's still going to be.
Yeah. I not to get we're getting even more technical, but some advice, I believe in Postgres. This is Postgres?
Yes.
I think you can alias a table so that it is available under both names.
I did not know that.
I believe that's the case. And so then you can change some of the code and not all of the code, and things that are changed will work. Things that are not will still work. I'm pretty sure you can do that. You should look into that.
Yeah, that would be super helpful, because that would also, that would allow me to also roll back really easily. Whereas if I'm doing full renames, rolling back is also requires making changes to kind of the database, the tables, and the
once
columns.
you change the database table, you need to change everything.
Yeah,
but if you can alias it and have it available under both names, then
cool.
you can do it.
So what I'm going to do what I'm going to do on Monday is I'm probably going to go to the client and say that I was spending a lot of time over the weekend reading up on Postgres, and that I found this incredible tool that would be perfect. That's great. Okay, cool.
Well, I could be wrong though, but I'm pretty sure that is a feature.
No, I have a check. I was thinking about this way. Potentially, there's a way of even doing it at the model level, where you can change the name that kind of your Rails application uses to reference that table. And so potentially there's also a way of doing it there.
Yeah. But that's not going to help you for like if it's written in joins and stuff like that.
That's also true. Yes. Yeah, that's not going to help.
Okay, I've got another one along these same lines.
Go on, hit me.
We've had 2 sessions now where we've tried to use an LM for best practice refactoring. Like yesterday's was, we have a God class in an application, identify issues and fix them. And then we did another one previously where it was like identifying issues from Rails anti-patterns and then making improvements. And it's we're having a lot of success identifying the issues, or it's identifying the same issues that we are. And even to the point of making good suggestions about what to do to fix it. But then when it gets to the details of it, we're just never happy with, let alone it breaking things, because it does break things. But just the specifics of what it's doing. It's choosing this name. We don't like that name. It's writing the class this way. That's not how we would write it.
And this is Copilot. What tool?
It's Copilot with any LLM. And I'm wondering, or I'm still trying to figure out whether I'm learning that it's just not good at that, or I am too picky.
Hey, don't blame yourself. Okay, this is what the machines want. They want us to blame ourselves internally and crumble as human beings. Okay.
Yeah, but Mateus was saying he read a post about this where like people with taste or developers with taste are really struggling at that point to be okay with the code that is being generated, because it's just not what we would do.
Yeah, it's a real
So
struggle.
I know you're working on a guide, right? A guide to give LLMs that will hopefully have it do more things in our style.
We are working on that, which hopefully will become available soon in the public guise that Thoughtbot has, which is to kind of keep it more aligned to Thoughtbot style. I do like telling my LLM, pretend you're Sandy Metz. That's quite a fun technique of mine, and it really does. It says, well, actually, this is what Sandy would do now. And so it gives me a few options. Then it says, but this is what Sandy would do, which I'm enjoying. But this is like, in general, this is where like I really struggle with. I want to find a good way to describe this, because I haven't really got it clear in my head. But I did a recent podcast with someone called we were actually working with on a project, Don Shin from Crosscom. So we did a podcast together recently. And it's like, how invested do we get in these LLM tools? Because there's an effort versus outcome metric, and I'm struggling to work out where it sits. So we could spend a lot of effort in, let's say, the problem that you've described, really working on the prompts, really training it, using, I don't know, MCP servers that help it to call out to third-party applications or integrations that help it do that, and automate and do more and more. But then it's like, what is my outcome going to be? And how do I even measure it? This is one of the things I'm struggling with is like, it's so hard to measure whether it's been better for me to use this tool. Does that make sense?
Oh, it makes total sense. I think the distinction is it's actually going back to what you were like. It's similar to when you are doing something and you spend a whole bunch of time writing a script or something and you spend an hour writing the script to save 15 minutes, doing a task. That's worth it if you do that task regularly, and it's gonna, you spend an hour and you get something that is reusable in the future for something that you do often, because then you end up saving time. I'm not quite sure that it's there yet in terms of being able to get things that you then like be like, well, this will make it better and faster next time.
That's
I feel like
problem.
I'm starting over every time, and that might be because things are evolving so quickly too.
I don't see. I wonder, is this the inherent nature of the tool, of the beast? Because, like you described with a script, that script is very predictable. It will do the same thing every single time. Now, granted, let's say you've got a script which goes out to npm to install a package for you, like which you've been updating it manually, and now you want it to do it automatically for you. There is some things could change. They could change on the npm side. They can change on your local machine where you store packages, and you might have to make updates to that script. But in general, that script is very predictable. It's much easier to I think, work with than these LLMs where I just feel like it's not predictable. So the same script which refactored which let's say you spend a long time on your project with this script that's able to get things to where you want it to get to, and then I pull it across to my project, I might not get the same results. I then can't even measure the results, and it's so difficult to measure if how I'm changing it is going in the right direction for the results. So that's where I'm like really struggling with effort versus outcome with these tools.
Yeah, I'm there with you. I'm there with you.
But at the same time, it feels like everyone's investing in them. Like everyone's taking time to kind of like learn Claude code and get it set up with, I don't know, individual instructions, sub agents. It's just because you could spend every waking hour, like really optimizing your LLM for you. And yeah, that's a challenge.
Yeah. And let's. I think we run into this before. Is that we aren't. If you don't do it, someone else will. Like we don't write Visual Studio Code. We use Visual Studio Code. We didn't be like, I want to program, and therefore I need to make an editor. So I think as long as you engage and figure out what works today, there's other people who are working on making general coding solutions and agents and everything better. And we can benefit from that over time. Maybe that's where things are at right now, is like, we don't need to spend time making the editor. What is working for us? What's working for me is basically like autocomplete, basically. Like that's like if I go in and I start and it's like my workflow. Okay, I'm going to write a test because I do test driven development. I write the test doc string, which says what the test is going to do, and I see what the LLM would fill that out with, and I'm like, yeah, that looks good, or no, it doesn't, and I start to write it myself. If it looks good, I accept it and bring it in, maybe change a little bit of it.
Right.
So, okay, now I have the spec, run it. I run it, I see it fail. Okay, now I go over to the code, and then I do. And when you go over to the code that way, it has the context of the spec that it wrote.
Yeah.
And so it auto completes the code for that, and you'd be like, that doesn't look like how I would write it, or it does, and I accept it. And otherwise, so it makes me faster in my work and doesn't slow me down at all. Like I know that I would be slowed down if I went over in agent mode and had to do a bunch of stuff for me.
Yeah, I think that's a nice light touch way to kind of use the LLMs as well. I think I've also been using it in a similar way, although recently kind of trying to move over from Copilot towards Claude Code just to try it out and see how it is. But I'm definitely finding that, if you allow it to do too much, that kind of ends up slowing you down and you end up having to go and like correct things. But I think as it's been for the last couple of months, it's continuously trying to find a good balance and trying to find like, it's just not at the moment, like things haven't really leveled out so much like across the industry in terms of best way to use it, how to use it. So that's a continuous kind of work in progress. I'm wondering is also, as well as like things we literally been working on recently. Tell me something that's frustrated you recently. Have you been working with any things which is like, I want to hear what's made you angry recently?
Well, so it actually was on. Remember when on one of these previous episodes when I was talking about our CRM?
Oh, I do remember.
We use, and I was unreasonably angry about. Actually, no, I stand by it. I was not unreasonably angry. I hate when when I'm trying to type in a box and the focus is stolen. And I feel like in a lot of JavaScript web applications, that just happens all the time. Particularly when it's loading, like, and you're like, okay, I can start using this now. And it's like, no, you can't, because I'm about to put a pop-up on the upper right-hand corner over here. So that happens and your focus is lost.
And so this is something which isn't really going away. I mean, this is spanning episodes, this grievance.
Yes. So, and the other thing is I'm just like over visiting a website and seeing a loading indicator. Like we live, it is 2025. Why are we putting like these rich front-end JavaScript applications that take, so long to load? And then you just, at the end of the day, it's an HTML web page.
I feel a bit guilty here. At a previous company, not thoughtbot, we had like a really slow page. So we did one of those things. Have you ever used like Skyscanner?
Yeah.
And often you have these compare the market tools or stuff like that, which kind of compare, and they have to make heavy calculations. So when you first visit the page, you get kind of this intermediary page, which has like a nice picture of, let's say, an aeroplane or something, and it gives you like nice travel quotes. Guilty. I am so guilty of doing that on one project, not at Thoughtbot, but where instead of improving performance, I was like, let's just keep people entertained while they wait.
Yeah, but was it on load, like first visit, first load?
It was first load to a certain page, which had to do a lot of heavy calculations. Yeah, and it was. I think I even just took some like quotes, inspirational quotes off the internet, and just made people cycle through them.
I've always believed this, but I, more so now than ever, things are off in the wrong direction. We need to get back to web standards, HTML, CSS, web pages rendered, sent to the browser and rendered. And you can then use JavaScript to enhance the experience and do the experience. But to have the entire experience dependent on rendered from JavaScript is just the wrong thing.
I mean, but that's kind of like, what happened. I don't know, maybe it's 4 or 5 years ago when everyone was talking about these SPAs, these single page applications, and you have all these JavaScript heavy front end frameworks, which I think was heavily influenced by mobile and the way people were used to kind of using their apps natively. Do you think JavaScript has killed the internet? Is that what you're saying?
It's killed my enjoyment of the majority of the internet.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like I feel the same to you. It's the same as you in terms of like keeping things really simple and really basic.
Like when I load a page on that CRM, it's like all over the place. As like it's like just putting like it's like rendering. Like I can't even describe it. It's just like it's building the UI in front of my eyes every time I like load a new tab with that. Yeah. And then I'm like, okay, the UI is built. Okay, I'm going to start typing in this box. And then it's like, no, I have 3 notifications to show you up on the right-hand side corner of this site. And it's like, boom, 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 and it steals my focus. And I'm like, for the love of all.
It's very hard. Look, I feel bad because I don't want to leave you in this state, but I've got a hard stop coming up in because I've got a meeting that I need to get to. But I hope you feel like this was a helpful conversation where you could kind of talk about your abandonment.
Why did you ask me for something that I was frustrated by? Did you have a point of that question?
No, not really.
Or were you just trying to make me frustrated?
I just wanted to, I've got a personal interest in seeing how many CEOs I can frustrate today. So I thought, I'd go for it. No, it was interesting. We spoke about kind of what we learned recently, and I was interesting, like what's been top of mind, which hasn't been so positive. But I'm glad you didn't get to ask me back.
Well, that is fueling some things that I've learned because I've wanted to use CSS container queries for a while now. And so I've known about them, but I haven't used them extensively. And so I've been, you've probably noticed, I've been doing some layout and design changes to the application that we use at Thoughtbot called Hub, redoing the layouts because they were written like 8 years ago using absolute positioning and that kind of thing, and using CSS grid and then container queries instead of media queries, so that their things are responsive to the actual size they have available, not just the size of the browser itself. And that has been fun to work on.
That sounds great. So that brings us to the end of this episode where
next episode, I'm going to ask you what you're frustrated by.
Do it.
Just right at the end of the episode.
Let's do it. And put me on that MCP live stream. For those who are listening to this, definitely check out the AI in Focus live stream that Chad's been doing with different guests, because that will cover a lot of the topics that we've done. And check out the live stream I did, which explains MCP, Model Context Protocol, in a really simple way for developers to get their heads around exactly how it's working.
Yeah, all that's on the Thoughtbot YouTube channel, which we'll link in the show notes. And speaking of show notes, you can subscribe to the show and find those notes at giantrobots.fm. If you have questions or comments, email us at hosts@giantrobots.fm. You can find me on Mastodon at cpytel@thoughtbot.social.
Find me on LinkedIn or my personal website, samibirnbaum.com.
This podcast is brought to you by Thoughtbot. Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you next time.
See ya. Bye.